7% of the UK are privately educated.
Very wealthy few aren't just buying an education. They're buying access to power and privilege.
Private schools are a public disaster.
UK private schools. The horses, polo shirts, croquet, and rich families with perfectly groomed hair.
It will ruin your hair.
In this video, I'm going to share with you the relationship between real estate and education in the UK. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth property content. In Hong Kong, main house schools are elite institutions, but you don't always need to spend more money to get into them. Both Lhasa College and St. Paul Secondary School are top of the crop, yet tuition-free schools. What's that got to do with the UK, you may ask? Well, in the UK, you can draw a very distinct line between access to an amazing education and a not-so-good education. And that line is drawn between private schools and public schools. But what that line actually marks is your net worth. Private schools charge an average fee of 146,000 Hong Kong dollars per year, not including boarding. So you can only imagine the exclusivity. In fact, only 67% of the UK population attends private schools. And what does all this have to do with real estate? Everything. Let's break it down. The UK education system is convoluted, but simply put, there are two types of schools, independent and state-funded. As early as the 6th century, independent schools were first established to provide academic support to the impoverished. During the 19th century, the British Empire grew to become the first global industrial power, and suddenly, independent schools became exclusive to the elites. That's when making enough money to pay off tuition became a pipe dream for many people. UK private schools have three very distinct characteristics. Number 1, extreme social exclusivity. Families that have access to private education usually belong to the top 5%, making at least 1.2 million Hong Kong dollars per year. Number 2, educational privilege. Privately educated people generally receive an income 3.7 times higher than that of public school attendees. They also dominate a high percentage of prestigious jobs. 68% of top barristers, 74% of senior judges, and 71% of senior officers are all from independent schools. Number 3, outstanding academic performances. Now with all that money pouring in, private schools have all the resources and opportunities at their fingertips. 48% of private school students receive A's in their A levels, compared with the paltry national average of 26%. So, let's say you want to get into one of these fancy private schools. What could you do? Well, the state school allocation system works in a way that prioritizes children who live closer to the school. So moving to a place nearest to your favorite institution will greatly increase your chances of getting in. Unfortunately, school quality is one of those factors that affect property prices, which are higher in popular school districts. Even among state schools, property prices are higher near outstanding schools, around 8% higher near primary schools and 6.8% higher near secondary schools. Average property prices of top areas for outstanding schools are actually 4,260,000 Hong Kong dollars higher than average. Nonetheless, family tenants prefer affluent cities like Oxford, London, Westminster, and the Southeast for enhancing their advantage of accessing highly regarded schools. If private schools remain untouched, they will always be destined for the already privileged class. When they graduate and work in places with high income, rich kids continue to be concentrated in affluent cities since only they can afford housing there. It really goes without saying that this is a terrible situation for those that fall into the bottom 95%. So what can possibly be done? The key strategy is to tackle overall social inequality. The most simple solution is hoping that the government changes the current education system. It could start by getting rid of the policy of sorting children into schools according to proximity, or by investing more into the public school system. There's always the weird fact that many independent schools enjoy charitable status, but that's for the government to decide. It has already made some efforts, such as spending £1.8 billion on education in 2021 and plans to spend up to $4.3 billion in 2022. But realistically, not much is going to happen. Unlike Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, not everyone has a chance of winning the golden ticket. Hey, but that doesn't mean you can't capitalize on the situation. As investors, we find undervalued items, buy them, then sell for their real value. So here's how you go about it. Firstly, understand that UK property prices and rental return rate are not positively related, like sugar intake and diabetes risk. For example, renting in London, where the average rent is high, costs around 15,121 Hong Kong dollars, but rental return rate only comes to 2.9%. Whereas Liverpool, with lower rent levels, has a return rate of 4.62%. Next, do your research and find locations with emerging private schools. Private schools show larger prospects of becoming more prestigious, which is sure to attract lots of rich parents. After all, 90% of potential property buyers in the UK prioritize being in the catchment areas of high-ranked schools. What's that? You're worried that your investment might flop? Actually, this is also why I suggest going for places where the base pricing is low. Your best bet is going to be regeneration areas, which are basically the equivalent of urban renewal in Hong Kong. These developments hold a lot of potential for future growth in both public and private investments. Even if you aren't looking to explore the market, applying the same strategy as a home buyer is also quite viable, especially if you have children. It may be a little tricky, but look for new schools that might be underrated. These schools might not yet be well known, but there's a chance that their graduates perform well in university. If they are underrated, it's likely that the pricing on the property nearby is also undervalued, which is where you swoop in and secure your future. Once again, regeneration areas might be the place to start looking. Also, check out places like Liverpool and Salford. We'll leave a blog post with deeper details in the description below. Evaluating where you purchase property is really dependent on your budget and your priorities. The biggest tip we can give you is to do the math. Thank you for keeping us company through this complicated socio-economic breakdown. To keep up with more property information and expert insight, sign up to our newsletter and follow our social media pages.